In this video we're going to animate our CAN circling around the planet Mars. First thing I did was import the CAN and scale it down. Next I'm going to address my timeline to set it for 300 frames. To do that I'll make sure that I see one over on the left hand side in both boxes. And then on the right hand side I'll set that inside box to 300. Now we're going to put in a path on which to animate the CAN. Going to the top view, I'll hold down my space bar and go to create. I'll go to the CV curve tool and I'll go to the attributes. I'm going to set it for 2 and I'll draw an arc that circles about halfway around the planet. I'll hit return to set it in its object mode and then I'll go to my perspective view. In my perspective view, first thing I will do is hit 4 on the keyboard. We're going to introduce a thing called a locator, and it comes in the center of the file, so we want to make sure we can see it. Holding down the space bar, I'll go to create and locator. You'll see a cross shape in the middle of your viewport. I'll leave it selected and then I'll shift select the path. Going to the hot box by holding down my space bar, I'll go to constrain and I'll go to motion paths. And the first term you'll see is attached to motion path, but I'm going to the attributes first. In the attributes, I'm going to choose time slider. That will reflect the 300 frames that we see in our timeline. The animation will take 300 frames to complete based on this setting. I'll now hit apply. And you'll see now the green cross is attached to the path. If I were to click and drag with my left mouse through it, you'll see that green cross following the shape of the path. Now, I'd like the CAN to follow that. So I'll put the CAN very close to the locator. And with the CAN selected, I'll shift select on the locator and I'll hit P to parent. Now, if I were to drag through my timeline, the CAN is following the path as well. Now, the shot we want with this would go something like this. Close up, and the CAN will make a pass. And I'll go in and kind of manipulate this so the CAN is on screen the whole time until it goes off on the left hand side. I don't want it to start here, so I'll rotate it this way a bit so it's out of view. And then I'll come around, I'll zoom back a bit, and now I have pretty much what I want. I want to preview it, what it would look like with a light. So what I would like to do is be able to play with the lights and not lose this shot and arrangement. So I'm going to introduce a camera, and the camera will be hidden when we're actually manipulating the shot, and when we return to it, it'll maintain this position. So I'm going to go back to create, and I'll choose cameras, and I'll just click on the word camera. I'll go to my top view first, and in my top view I'll hit T on the keyboard. When I do that, I can now move the camera independent of the pivot point. So now I'm going to actually go into the camera view to line it up exactly the way I want. It will behave just like the perspective view, but then we can hide it and return to the perspective view to fine-tune the edits and set up our lights. I'll go back to my 4 views, and if I go to my perspective view now, I can go to panels, perspective, and there is my camera. Now I can set the camera up pretty much the way I did the perspective, but it's going to remain static. So I'll start to manipulate it, and I've got something pretty close to what I want. I'll zoom in to optimize the scale, and that looks pretty good. If I wanted to, I could always go in here now and edit the path, so perhaps I would like it to come from the bottom a little bit more. I can always go in and start to play with some of these Bezier, so this is really kind of subjective. Now the reason for the locator, instead of just attaching the CAN directly to the path, is that now I can manipulate the CAN I want. So if I want to see the top of the CAN more, I can click and drag that. We don't have those options if we connect it directly to the path. It could come in upside down. All right, so now I'm going to go back to my perspective view. under Panels, Perspective View, and I'll introduce my light. I'll zoom back. I'll hit 4 on the keyboard. Holding down the spacebar, I'll go to Create Lights, and I will choose a spotlight. I'll hit W on the keyboard. I'll drag it out, and I'll start to put it into position the way I'd like it to be. I'll hit T on the keyboard so I can put the pivot in the middle of the viewport. If I were to hold X on the keyboard, I can snap it right to the center of the grid to get started if I chose. I'll go to my attributes for the light. I'll make the intensity 50 for now. I'll go to the cone angle and make it larger. I'll make the penumbra angle 10, and then I'll open up the Arnold tab, and I'll make sure that the exposure is 3.5 to start. I'll now return to my camera view, and I'll go ahead and hit the Arnold render button to see what it's going to look like when we finally do export the animation.